Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This past weekend was the largest Pokemon video game tournament of all time with a massive 6,100 competitors, and today we are going to be breaking down the team I used to finish 36th with a record of 12 wins and 3 losses. And for those of you that are just here for the rental team, you can find that at the end of the video or in the description down below beside the paste. But if you are here for all that other stuff in between, then let's get into it. You guys can see the final team on this screen right here. But of course, before we get into that, really quickly on the team building process, I had been trying to make Sneasler, Kingambit work all format, normally with Basculegion as well, but this is kind of where this core started. I really like Garchomp in this format as well, just seems like the most consistent dragon type we have, so I wanted to try to work that onto the team as well. I think it was early Thursday morning. I had sent 2 screenshots to my group chat and I said, hey guys, which one of these looks better? It was Meganium, Kingambit, Sneasler stuff, or it was this team or a version of this team with a Rotom over the Basculegion. And my concept was I was tired of having my Mega Evolution be pressured off by Kingambit. I was trying Delphox, I was trying Frostlass, I was trying Gengar at one point as well. And I realized all these Megas that I liked, that I seemingly wanted to use, they were threatened by Kingambit Sucker Punch. And yes, you have ways to play around them, but then I wanted to pair that with a Basculegion as well, and then I have 2 things that are just losing to Basculegion, and those are like, 2 things that are losing to Kingambit, and those pieces are just both crucial pieces of my team, right? You got your Mega Evolution, which should be one of your big pieces, and then Basculegion is a broken piece on its own. So there, right there, if Kingambit is shutting down 2 of those, it gets a little difficult. So I was struggling, and I ended up sending the Meganium and the Charizard screenshot to my friend. You guys can see that on the screen. And I said, what's better? I think this Sun team is a little more complete. And that's exactly what we went with. We went with the Sun team, and I really wanted a water type that wasn't a water type, if that makes any sort of sense. So the concept being that you wanted a water type on a Sun team that didn't have to be a water type all the time to function. For example, something like Palafin needs to be that water type, right? It really benefits from just spamming those water moves. Whereas something like a Rotom Wash or a Melodic, those guys kind of benefit from not necessarily spamming water attacks, but having an option to click the water attack when needed, right? Same with this Basculegion here, which we'll get into in a minute, and why we eventually settled on it, is that I wasn't locked in to a move. I could have switched, I could have dropped the Wave Crash if I wanted, but more often than not, I'm probably going last respects in the late game, setting up immediate Wave Crashes early if I wanted to, but I didn't need to be reliant on that water attack, and I think that's very, very important on Sun teams. Right, if you start putting Palaf in here, then all of a sudden we need to get water moves going, and the sun is already up, and we don't have another attack. It doesn't feel as good, right? So that's kind of how we ended up with Basculegion. It was a Rotom for a little bit. Rotom went away very, very quickly after we realized that Basculegion can be built bulky. And when you can have Basculegion live things, it's actually a very good Pokemon. I mean, it's a very good Pokemon when it doesn't live things. But when you can't kill the Basculegion in one shot, like 90% of the players I'm assuming are expecting to be able to do with whether it be a Kingambit or just a strong dark move in general, it becomes very, very problematic. And this is why Basculegion is here. This is why it is a bulky Basculegion. I probably could have gone bulkier looking back. However, given that it was already Thursday and the tournament started on the Saturday, most of these spreads that you will see as we get into this team are very basic. I hit 1 or 2 benchmarks, and then I kind of just dumped the rest into certain spots. Of course, there's definitely ways to improve on these spreads, so don't just rip them and be like, yes, these are the best spreads possible for this team, because I do think there are tons of different options. However, they hit the benchmarks I wanted to hit, and it worked out pretty well in the tournament. So we're going to start from the Whimsicott because, you know what, why not? And I think it's probably one of the more obvious choices of the team. It's pretty straightforward in terms of moveset, right? You got your Moonblast for big damage, Encore, Tailwind for support, and then of course just Protect to add to that longevity. And when you have something like Encore, I really do like having Protect on the Whimsicott because it gives you that turn, right? I want to see if my opponent's going to click Fake Out. I want to see if my opponent's going to click Protect. Well, I'm going to just scout that out nice and safe. If they lock into something wrong, I have Encore Pressure on the next turn. It's the last turn of Tailwind. I want to make sure I get Tailwind up again. Okay, boom, I can Protect. So Protect, I think, obviously, probably accurately rated on Whimsicott. I think a lot of players are running it. However, I have seen some players, drop this move for stuff like, a grass type attack or a fake Tears. Obviously, very team dependent, but I really do believe in Protect on Whimsicott being probably one of its best fourth moves. Absolutely nothing crazy on this Whimsicott, by the way, guys. I know it looks a little weird seeing a Sash Whimsicott with a lot of bulk. Straightforward, very simply put. I hit 179 because I wanted to make sure I was outpacing the Ninetaleses at 177, and if I was going to get to 178, I didn't want to be speed tiding any random Raichus or anything like that, so drop it up to 179. Nothing else really sits in that speed tier. I didn't need to be faster. If a Sneasler was going to outpace me at this point, it was going to be Jolly, and I wouldn't be able to catch up to it anyways. And then in terms of the bulk, this is for dual Wing Beat from Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl was picking up in the metagame. I could not have my Whimsicott just dying. I needed Whimsicott to be the Aerodactyl matchup. You can look at my team probably and say, how do I even beat that thing? That's a great question because I still don't know. I beat a few of them. I lost to a few of them. It's an interesting matchup, and there's definitely something I would look into moving forward with this team. But being able to survive the dual Wing Beat with Whimsicott made turn one a lot more comfortable, right? I was able to lead something like Whimsicott and maybe even Sneasler, and I didn't have to protect the Cott. More often than not, I was leading like Whimsicott, Basculegion into that matchup, right? I didn't have to protect. I could just send Tailwind, Wave Crash because there was no threat of me losing a piece. If they match Tailwind, okay, cool. I didn't lose Whimsicott. If they don't match Tailwind, they dual Wing Beat. I didn't lose Whimsicott. They never get Tailwind up. And we go from there, right? So it just feels... It felt very important for the Sash Whimsicott to be able to live that, knowing how common Aerodactyl is and how likely they were to bring it into my team, right? Aerodactyl is here in the metagame as a Sneasler answer, as a Charizard answer, as a Whimsicott answer, and I have all three of them. So being able to survive that definitely felt important. And then I kind of just dumped the rest into special attack, guys. Once again, maybe there's a little more bulk you can put somewhere on this, but at the end of the day, I'm focus sashed. I didn't really see a need for it, so get as much special attack as I can, dump it into the bulk to live the dual Wing Beat, and honestly, probably the MVP of the team right here. It's an unbelievable how underrated Whimsicott is. Obviously, everybody knows it's good, but I think people are sleeping on it currently in this metagame. Moving on, we'll go Garchomp. It's probably the next most basic one. Actually, no, Sneasler is, but we'll get to Sneasler after because I'm already on Garchomp. Choice Scarf Garchomp. Absolutely nothing crazy here. This does not need to be a Choice Scarf. This is Choice Scarf because I had played 30 games with it and didn't have time to play more games with a non-Choice Scarf Garchomp. Just to put that out there. This does not need to be Scarfed. The benefits of Scarf, though, I do like the concept of just being a fast piece without needing to have the Whimsicott on the board. However, more games than not, I had the Whimsicott on the board. I had my speed control on the board. This I don't think needed to be Scarfed. Probably play around with the items if you are looking to take this team, but I think Choice Scarf in general is still relatively fine, especially since my Basculegion wasn't Choice Scarf. I do like having that one piece that, doesn't rely on the Whimsicott being on the board, but it definitely doesn't need to be Scarfed. Once again, pretty standard moveset for a Scarf Garchomp, guys. Absolutely nothing crazy. Dragon Stab, Ground Stab, single target, Earthquake for spread, and then, of course, just Rock Slide to cover the opposing Charizards. And very, very basic in terms of spread. Normally, I was going to go slower on the Garchomp in terms of speed tier, but I wanted to bump it up to 149. I didn't need to be any faster than this. 149 is the speed stat that allows me to be Choice Scarfed and faster than things like random Mega Aerodactyls. And that's a problem when you play versus Charizard, right? If I had ran into like a random Mega Aerodactyl, I wanted to be able to make sure that I had a piece that maybe outside of Tailwind could potentially deal with it. That's why the 149 speed stat, you can probably lower it down to like 146 if you don't really care about Mega Aerodactyl or anything like that. Probably don't need as much attack, but overall it's a slower paced format. So I liked hitting this final attack bump or whatever you want to call it. Right, that spot where you get those extra 2 points. Right, I liked hitting that final bump there. It just felt like I was actually doing damage with this piece as opposed to, not doing as much as potentially needing. Obviously, I don't think I'm getting instant KOs, but I was doing a lot of good damage. And I don't think I'd go lower than this, especially on like a Choice Scarf Garchomp, because I'm using this thing to put out pressure, right? I don't want my Choice Scarf user to do like 2 points of damage. It doesn't mean anything, right? I want my Choice Scarf user to be doing meaningful damage. So had that final attack jump there on that. And then after that, the bulk is just completely random. I'm going to be real with you guys. This is not for anything special. It's, well, might as well put it in HP. 187 is a cool number to hit. And then dump most of it into Spadef. And then because I am a coward and am stuck in my past ways of needing to invest in 5 stat points instead of 4, I put 1 in defense. Literally it. Feel free to mess around with the bulk. Those are the benchmarks I hit, guys. Once again, pretty standard Scarf Garchomp. Absolutely nothing crazy to talk about here. Same with the Sneasler, guys. There is nothing new here. This is your normal adamant white herb Sneasler. I know a lot of the time Sneaslers were going bulkier. I didn't feel like that was a necessity on this team. I have the natural bulk on a lot of my other pieces. Once again, Sneasler, similar to that Garchomp, it was allowed to be my piece, or one of my pieces, that was kind of just punching through the metagame, right? Pretty standard moveset here with the Dire Claw into close combat. And then just, honestly, it's max. I don't really care where you put the other two. It just doesn't matter. Probably put them both in defense. Would arguably make a lot more sense than what I did here with the 1-1. But once again, it just felt weird. I don't know. I am weird when it comes to EV spreads. If I do this, I don't know. I did this at first. It didn't look good. I don't know. It looked weird. I'm like, surely the bulk can't matter that much. I'm 252 or 32 anyways. Like, the bulk can't matter that much. Hopefully it doesn't matter. It didn't come up in a tournament that it would have mattered. So we're sticking with this. We're running with this for now. But definitely if you want to invest in defenses a little differently, feel free. But the concept here was, this is one of my punching pieces. It's going to go out there and it's going to punch. Where do we want to go? Let's go Kingambit, because this was one of the more fun pieces I had for this team. It was actually one of the last pieces I finalized as well. Yes, it was meant to be on the team from the beginning, but in terms of how I was going to run it, it was up in the air, because at one point I had Iron Head and Protect, at one point I had Low Kick and Protect, at one point I had Black Glasses, and my concept was, I need Kingambit to be that one piece that can kind of fit where I need it and either send a Sucker Punch or a big damaging attack when I need it. It doesn't need to do crazy amounts of damage with Kowtow or Sucker Punch. I don't need the Black Glasses, right? Similar to how Assault Vest Kingambit used to play, it was kind of just that kind of do-all piece. You know, you would throw it on the board, get a little bit of value from it, and if you get the value in the right spots, the rest of the team should be able to win the game. Or, you know, you get the value in the right spots from everything else, and then Kingambit can close out the game, right? It was kind of that, I can have this thing do everything. It was like having that AV Kingambit that obviously wasn't Assault Vest, but it had 4 attacks, right? So I had the luxury of having that coverage, and that is effectively what we wanted from this Kingambit. That was pretty much it. The spread is very bad. Do not take this spread. I do not think it's good. It might be close to good, but in general, I don't think it's amazing. So the night before the tournament, I had Kingambit down at 72 speed, and I had Basculegion down to speed point as well. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to add an extra speed point just to cover some speed ties, just for the fun of it. One game, we did have our Kingambit speed tie, which was kind of funny. So it made me it made our Kingambit speed tie as opposed to me being the slower one. Don't remember if it really mattered, but it was kind of funny that it actually did come up, that I had put an extra point of speed in. But this spread does nothing, okay? 32 HP, 9 defense. It lives the close combat from the Jolly Sneaslers, but I believe it's still a 40-ish% chance to die to the Adamant Sneaslers. So that doesn't really tell me anything. You know, like, I was sitting in front of Sneaslers and going, I might live this, I might not. And I didn't really appreciate that. It wasn't too fun. It was a little bit unsettling, you know. I would have liked to have committed to the bulk. I don't know exactly what the spread was. I think it has to get closer to the 18 point in defense to live that. But I had that initially. And as I was playing, I was like, I was missing KOs with the Iron Head, just barely. And I'm like, okay, can I get a little bit more attack? So I dropped it down to living the Jolly Sneaslers and got myself a little bit more attack. But I don't think it mattered. I would have actually rather had the knowledge, knowing that I would be able to survive the Sneasler, than having the little bit more attack. I also didn't click Iron Head at all throughout the tournament, which I don't know if that was just the matchups that I pulled, but I was playing Floettes. You'd think I'd be clicking Iron Head, right? But I ended up having a different game plan for the Floette teams, or at least most of them, because the ones I was playing pretty much all had that Aerodactyl on them, right? And Kingambit can't come to that. We'll get into some really quick general matchups afterwards, but overall, I didn't really find myself clicking Iron Head, so maybe that's a consideration to drop for Protect as well. Right? I know the championship team, the one that won, was Kowtow, Sucker Punch, Low Kick, Protect. So potentially, maybe you just don't need Iron Head, right? So once again, spread bad. I think the Gambit was very good at doing what I needed to do. I think it could have been better had I had a better spread and maybe Protect. But overall, it was a good piece. It fits the team very, very well. We'll quickly go to we'll go Charizard. You guys have been waiting long enough to see this Charizard. This is Charizard Y. Just for the sake of the video, I am going to, hold on, let me do this properly. I am just going to make it a Charizard Y here. Whoop. There we go, that should work. There we go. All right, just for the sake of the video, so we got our stats favored. But pretty standard in terms of move spread here, guys. I wasn't doing anything crazy. You know, Heat Wave, Weather Ball, Solo Beam, Protect. Just probably one of your most consistent Charizard Y spreads you're going to see, or moves you're going to see. But what I really liked, and like I said at the beginning of the video, I didn't like my Mega Evolution just dying. So I decided that, hey, you know what? It worked back in the day when you get your bulky Charizard Y. So you know what? Let's make a bulky Charizard Y. So this is my version of a bulky Charizard Y. I don't think you need more than 9 Modest, I'm going to be honest. I know 11 is the bump if you hit it, like the point where you get 2 again. But overall, I don't think you needed more than 9. It hit pretty much every calc I needed. I don't think I really missed any KOs that I really wanted at a certain time. And it was living things. The 825 is here in order to live Garchomp Rock Slide. And that came up time and time again in this tournament. And I don't think it's like a new concept. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm inventing the Charizard that lives Rock Slide from Garchomp. I think a lot of players are potentially on this. In fact, mine might be less bulky than some other Garchomps. But this bulk was huge. I lived a couple Rock Slides. I lived the Rock Slide once and then flinched. And I was like, ah. But like, you know what? It gave me the chance to be there. Right? And anytime you have a chance, especially maybe in an end game where, you know, you get a chance to get another attack off, that is absolutely massive. And having this longevity was fantastic. There was a lot of times when Kingambit would come in, my Charizard would be at half. And I think it was day 2, actually. I think it was either around 10 or 11. And my opponent had me down. I think I was like 88, 89 health. My opponent clicked Sucker Punch into my Charizard. And I thought for sure I was going down. I was going to lose this game. And we were cooked. I lived the Sucker Punch on like 3 HP, got my Heat Wave off, and ended up winning the set. So the bulk was very nice. In terms of finding a different calc for it, maybe not needing this much speed either, because that was one of the big things I debated as well. Do I need this much speed too? Because I do have Tailwind. I ended up deciding to say I'm going to be faster than, you know, the Jolly Basculegions, but there was definitely a spot where I don't need this speed either, right? So this can maybe go down. You probably want to outpace like the Adamant Basque. I don't know where that sits, but that's probably a good spot to sit. I don't know. I wanted to outpace the Jolly Basculegions. That's why I'm 144. Maybe you want to be faster than like Max Modest Venusaur as well in Sun when you have Tailwind up. There's definitely some benchmarks here that you can have fun with. You could go a little faster as well. 146 makes you faster than Max Timid Venusaur in Sun when you have Tailwind up. So definitely some interesting benchmarks here. Some room to play around. But the concept of having the bulky Zard, guys, it just doesn't die. It was so good when this Pokemon doesn't die. The amount of extra damage, like getting 1 Heat Wave off, awesome. Getting 1 Heat Wave off at Max Modest is cool, but getting 2 Heat Waves off at not Max Modest is just stronger, right? So the bulk felt very, very good all tournament, and I don't know if I could ever run a Charizard that wasn't bulky again. Like, it's actually crazy how good this piece was. And the last piece I haven't specifically talked about right now is going to be this Basculegion, is going to be the fish. Best mod in the format. And I'm going to say it. It is hands down the best Pokemon in the format. There's no debate. Like, you cannot debate this. I will not. I'm sorry. It's the best mod in the format. Yes, it's taken down easily by something like a Black Glasses Sucker Punch, right? Mine here has actually lived EV to live the non-Black Glasses one because a lot of the Kingambits were picking up Choppleberry. And like I said, I was tired of dying to Sucker Punch. So being able to sit in front of a Choppleberry Sucker Punch and send a Wave Crash is a lot nicer than being forced to play the mind game of, do I Aqua Jet, do I Wave Crash, right? It gave me a lot of opportunities where I was actually able to send a damage. This bulky Basculegion, once again, guys, I'm not going to pretend I came up with this concept. It picked up a lot on some of those Frostlass teams going around in the format. It picked up a lot. I think there was a weird team. I think there was I don't know if it was a Farigiraf, but there was a team that had like a Trick Room mode and a really, really bulky Basculegion. I think it was actually bulkier than mine. So there's definitely concepts to work, and I'm looking forward to exploring this concept more. But like I said, I came up with this team on Thursday. I needed to put in a spread that was going to, just kind of function. And the spread functioned pretty nicely, right? The Citrus Berry was clutch. It was nice because, you get to Wave Crash, chip some things down, and then you get your own health back. They think it's going to be a two-shot onto you. Well, it's not anymore because of Citrus Berry. It lived a lot of things that it probably had no business living as well. The 314, like I said earlier, it's specifically here for the Sucker Punch from the non-Black Glasses Kingambit, which was very nice throughout the tournament. And then I just kind of hit the stats that I felt like were relevant to me. Once again, you could definitely slow this down. You can definitely maybe drop the attack a little bit, but you want this piece to really be punching through things. So I didn't want to drop attack. And I also want it to be faster than Pelipper, right? My rain matchup wasn't necessarily bad, but my rain matchup could have had potential to be shaky, but I wanted something that was able to, give me a chance a little bit more versus, those modest Pelippers that are still going around. I know some are going jolly now, or timid now, excuse me, but those ones that are modest, I wanted to be able to beat. So right up to the night before the tournament, 118. This is where I sat. The Pelipper at modest hits 117. I hit 118, and I was happy with that. I had a little bit extra into attack, and I was like, okay, cool. I decided to change that literally the night before. I think it was like 11:30 p.m. the night before the tournament. And I'm like, why do I need this extra point in attack when I can go down and creeping modest Pelipper is something people have been doing with speed stats for a long, long time. So I didn't want to end up in a spot where, I'm playing a Rotom Wash, and this Rotom Wash was sitting at 118 to creep modest Pelipper, and I end up speed tying it and lose the game. I didn't want to be sitting in that scenario, so I said, you know what, I'll go up one more speed point. I have zero proof if this came up at all during the tournament, right? But I didn't underspeed a Rotom. So it both did and it didn't affect things. But that's why the speed stat's there, guys. That's why the defense is there. Really not much more to talk about in terms of each individual Pokemon. Overall, the team felt phenomenal. The team was absolutely incredible. You guys, like the synergy on this team, if anything felt bad, it was actually the Sneasler. It was good, don't get me wrong. It was a very key piece to my success. But Sneasler kind of felt a little suspicious, but it was overall a very solid team, and you just get to do a lot. When you have Whimsicott and some bulky pieces and some offensive pieces beside it, which is kind of what you're going to have when you have a Whimsicott, but the ability to just say, well, I'm going to lead Tailwind, or I'm going to lead my Whimsicott plus either one of my big sweepers or, one of my passive guys and go crazy. You can do a lot. Right? I can play the slow passive game, I can double protect, I can scout out, I can force some encores, and it limits their support options versus me. One of the big things I liked was like Whimsicott Garchomp. If I catch a Sneasler with that, it's like, are they going to fake out? I don't think so. And if they do fake out, well then that Sneasler is probably not doing anything next turn, because I'm almost certainly going to be clicking Encore or making a prediction that it's switching out. Right? So definitely some mind games with the Encore stuff, but overall, I think some common leads that you do definitely just get to do for free. I think Sneasler Basque is actually very, very strong. I think Whimsicott Garchomp is very, very strong. Whimsicott Charizard didn't really come up as a lead that I led too often. Surprisingly enough, it just was never felt like the right time to do it. I do think it's a really good lead though. Like, especially like if you're up a game going into like a game 2, you can all of a sudden just be like, they played that game really, really passively. Let me just go Whimsicott Charizard and send damage and see what happens. but a lot of the times with the weather wars in this game, that it just felt a lot better to keep Zard in the back. But it is a very good lead, especially if you think you can potentially catch your opponent on something. I never really led Kingambit. It's probably one of the bulkier pieces on the team, so I liked using it late or as a switch-in when I needed it. Overall, though, I mean, the team functions, right? Into Floette stuff, which I think is probably one of the bigger questions with this team. What are you doing with the Floette stuff? I like leading, like, Caught Basculegion, especially when they had the Aerodactyl. And then you clean it up with, like, Sneasler Charizard or Sneasler Kingambit. Or Charizard Kingambit if you feel like Sneasler isn't quite up to the task. But overall, that's kind of how I like to play around those Floette teams. I'm trying to think of what else would be in the metagame. The Frostlass stuff is just win Weather War, guys. Delphox stuff is just win Kingambit positioning. Nothing too crazy there. Same with, you can also win the Basculegion positioning into the Delphox game as well. The Follow Me Delphox stuff actually does become a little annoying, just because like it's difficult to take down Clefable. And I do wonder if that's a spot where I have Ironhead, and that's where the Ironhead does help me in that matchup. So maybe that's go back and that's why we keep Ironhead. But I didn't really play too many of those, if any at all. Actually, I can pull up my tournament run. Hold on a second. I can tell you exactly what I played. Right, you guys can see the tournament run here. I'm not going to get into this too much. There's really no reason to get into this. Once again, if you guys want to see these battles, I might post a few of the highlight matches on the channel later on in the week. But overall, if you want any of these matches, they're all up on my Twitch. I did stream the entire tournament, so feel free to check them out, see how I approach them. Overall, though, really, really cool tournament run. I'm just trying to think of other matchups of like what I would lead, because like I said, the common leads are just good. It's so early in the format. I didn't have like, you know, into this I do this, into this I do this. I was coming up with most of these matchups on the fact that I have 6 good Pokemon, and I'm going to find a way to make these 6 good Pokemon work in the moment of. And it gave me that flexibility, right? I'm a very big believer in, I want to have flexibility on my team. It's one of the reasons I don't like having dual megas, right? You see that Charizard Floette. That's the one that ended up winning the tournament as well, right? And you have 2 megas. It's great. They cover each other really, really well. But my problem is with that kind of team is when I have a fairy type, and I have a fairy type that people are going to try and counter, having a fire type beside it that I also want to bring just makes sense. I'm going to want both of them. But then I have to pick which one I mega in the battle. And then like both of them just kind of feel weird without having the option to mega, right? So I kind of stayed away from that kind of option. Obviously they are very good and you probably do just have to pick your mode. I'm not like completely knocking like the dual mega because I think it is good. But just not something I wanted. I wanted to have that flexibility where any of my 6 Pokemon could be brought. And that's exactly how I approached the entire tournament. Any of my 6 Pokemon can be brought here. I have the bulk, I have the pieces to figure out matchups on the fly as we go throughout the tournament. And it worked out very well. But as promised, guys, here is the rental. It is on the screen for you. As I said before, it will be down below as well, next to the PokePaste, if you guys just wanted to try it out on the simulator first. But overall, thank you all so much for watching, guys. If you guys are looking for the link to the tournament, it is also down in the description. I said down in the description multiple times. You guys should have found it by now if you are looking for it. But it's down there too, just in case you hadn't gone down there yet. But overall, with that, if you guys do enjoy this type of content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get out of here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in a future video.